All right, we're going to spend some more time today looking at setups for proportions within our triangles. So we looked at one of them, which is our splitting up our sides. It creates a piece over piece equaling piece over piece. And we're going to look at two more here today that involve setting up these proportions. So for our first one, we have three parallel lines. Here's our three parallel lines. They intersect two transversals. Here's transversal number 1 cutting through. Here's transversal number 2 cutting through. And within those transversals, the idea is that they divide them proportionally. So it's basically the exact same formula as you looked at yesterday with having a piece over piece equaling piece over piece. So we have a piece over piece in the red one, that's u to w and w to y, equaling piece over piece in the blue, that's v to x and x to z. So that one's a pretty straightforward one. You're looking at a bunch of parallel lines, and you're setting up piece over piece equaling piece over piece. Last one, this is the setup that's a little trickier. So let me break down what it says here. If a ray bisects an angle of a triangle, so here comes the ray, it is bisecting the angle, that's what those tick marks are there for, to show that it's a bisector and it makes those pieces the same. Then it divides, what it basically does is it divides my triangle into two sections, this section here in blue and then this section here in red. So within each section, I have a piece that the bisector cuts through, and then I have a side that's on one side of the bisector. And then same thing for the blue. I have a piece here, and then I have a side over here. So the way I like to phrase this one, is to say we have A to D and D to B. That is our pieces. So A to D is the blue piece, and D to B is the red piece. And then on the other side, C to A and C to B, those are the sides. Equals side over side. So that's the way I'm going to phrase this one. Piece over piece equals side over side. And so that's our setups. I'm going to take some time today to emphasize making sure you know how to solve these. That's a big thing I want you to get out of today. So, of course, we want to make sure we can set these up, but also I want you by the end of today to be comfortable with solving any of these equations. So let's start looking at an example here. So we've got our setup of our three lines that are parallel. We've got our setup of the two transversals cutting through. So we're going to end up with piece over piece in the blue equaling piece over piece in the red. Now with this equation, I'm going to start with x, which is the length of A to B. That is one of the blue pieces that's happening. So if I've got x on the top, I'm going to match it up with the other blue piece. And in this case, the other blue piece is 16, equaling piece over piece on the red. We have, remember, we need to keep consistent. So since x went on top, the matching part in the red is the 18. And matching up with the 16 is the 15. So that's our setup, matching up our pieces. Now, we're going to solve this equation. Remember, the big thing is that these are fractions. So this is division, which we're going to get rid of by multiplying. So on the left, I have x divided by 16. So I'm going to get rid of that dividing by 16 by multiplying by 16 on both sides. Then for the right side, I'm going to get rid of my 18 divided by 15. I'm going to get rid of that dividing by 15 with multiplying by 15. And that will cancel out all our fractions. If you're getting rid of a fraction, we can multiply by what's on the bottom, and that will get rid of our fraction. So these 16s will cancel. I have 15 times x. And then over here on the right side, my 15s cancel. And we're going to have 18 times 16, which is 288. So now it should be fairly straightforward to solve. We're going to divide by 15 on both sides. And we're going to get a decimal here, but it's not too messy a one. 19.2. That's an exact answer. So again, that was a piece over piece equals piece over piece. And we solved by multiplying what was on the bottom to get rid of our fraction. We're going to do a couple more. Here is our other setup for the day. Here comes the bisector cutting through, which divides us into two different sections of the triangle. So here comes our proportion. We have our piece over piece equaling side over side. So we're going to make sure we match up everything properly. So we've got our red piece over our blue piece on the left side. And then we have our red side over our blue side. I'm going to come back to the red piece and say our blue piece is x. So x is going to go on the bottom. And then we have our red side over our blue side. So our red side here is 7. And then our blue side is 13. Again, that's the different sections that you're dividing everything into. So then, we need to know what our red piece is. It's not labeled. All right, this is probably the trickiest part of today, so watch this closely. In order to get this red piece, we're going to write it in terms of x. So we're going to write this with an x in it. And the way that we're going to do that is to get a piece of the side, we're going to take the entire segment, which is the 15, and we're going to subtract away the piece we don't want, and that will leave us with the piece that we do want. So in this case, the whole thing is 15. So if I take that 15 and I subtract away the blue piece that I don't want, that will leave us with the red piece that we do want. So 15 minus x is going to be the way to write this one. Let's solve it. On the left side, think about what you're dividing by so that you can see what you need to multiply by. So over on the left, we're dividing by x. So we're going to multiply by x to undo that. Over on the right side, we're dividing by 13, so we're going to multiply by 13. on both sides to get rid of that dividing. So same situation as we had before. X's are going to cancel. And we have 13 times the 15 minus x. And then over here, the 13's cancel. We have 7 times x. So in order to solve this one, we're going to need to distribute. So we're going to take this 13 and multiply it across. We've got 13 times 15, which is 195, minus 13 times x. I haven't touched the right side yet. But now we're going to get everything with x on the same side. So we'll add the 13x. And now we just need to divide to get rid of that multiplying. So dividing that by 20 gives me 9.75. So again, big things to point out. This is our new one of piece over piece equaling side over side. And then remember that when we wrote this red piece, we got that from taking the whole thing, subtracting away the part that we didn't want, which was my blue piece, and that left me with my red piece. So now we'll do a couple more. I'm going to go a little faster on these ones. So we've got our diagram. Because we got the corresponding angles, these are parallel. And so that will give us our first equation that we had, which is our piece over piece equaling piece over piece. So let's see if we can write out what our equation is going to be. We're solving for x here. I'm going to start with 120 over x. And let's think about what needs to go on the right side. If I put the 120 on top, on the left, then the piece that matches with it on the right is the 150. And then the piece that matches with x for the blue piece is 300. I'm going to pause for a few seconds before I solve and give you a head start on figuring out what to multiply by. See if you can figure out what we're going to multiply by to solve this. Here it comes. On the left, we're dividing by x, so we want to multiply by x to get rid of that fraction. On the right, we're dividing by 300, so I'm going to multiply by 300 to get rid of that fraction. So now we have some of our same canceling, no more fractions. That gives me 120 times 300, which is 36,000. And then 300s cancel over here, no more fraction. 150x. So now we'll divide to solve. And that gives us x being 240. Now one more piece to this, that won't quite be our final answer because it asks us for h to f. So if I want h to f, that is this entire distance right here. Well, now I know all the pieces. So to get h to f, we're going to take the 120 that we already had, plus the 240 that we just solved for, which will give us 360 yards. Let's put a label on that. All right, one more piece to show you before I turn you to work. Let's take a look at this one. And again, I'm going to pause for a moment, and I want to see if you can come up with how we're going to write this little piece right here. In order to set up our equation. This is going to be one that's piece over piece equaling side over side. But we need to make sure to be able to write out what that piece is. This is one of the homework problems. This will be one of the homework problems. So again, it'll be piece over piece equaling side over side. But to get this red piece right here, we're going to, again, take whole thing minus the part that we don't want will give us the piece that we do want. So the whole thing, the entire thing, is 2x minus the piece that we don't want, which is 10. That leaves us with the red piece that we do want. So that should be enough to get you started on this homework assignment. There are a couple of trickier problems, particularly where you're going to need to factor in order to solve. It's only one or two of them, but if you come across those, we'll go over a factoring one tomorrow so that you can see what that looks like.